Deep Dive Film School makes no claim of ownership of the film footage used in this episode. The film footage is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Deep Dive Film School uses the footage only for purposes of education, commentary, and criticism under fair use. Also, we're going to spoil the hell out of this movie, so this is your warning. Welcome to Deep Dive Film School!
This week we're starting a new series called Forgotten Gems. We're going to start with 1997 Ang Lee film, The Ice Storm.
Let's dive on in! Alright everybody, I am Adam Sherlock.
And I am Adam Palcher.
And if you like what you see/hear, please like and subscribe, as well as hit the little bell for the notification. Lets you know when we have a new episode out.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have them every week, so please subscribe if you like it.
Indeed.
All right. Let's get into this. So
let's talk about this new sort of a special piece here, the Forgotten Gems. You know, basically, like, I don't know, earlier this year when we were talking about like movies that we were going to do both in festival form as well as like these sort of like one-off things, I started thinking about all these amazing movies, and I won't lie, and I know I've said this to you before, and when I've said it to you before, your reaction was not incredible. It was sort of like, oh yeah, that thing. But to me, like, it was one that I really loved. The one that I thought of was actually The Last Starfighter. Like, that was the movie that I was But it was the movie I was like, God, it's kind of got lost in the shuffle over all the years, but damn, it's good. And I was like, these forgotten gems. They never really won awards. They didn't necessarily like break a bunch of box office stuff.
But they hold the test of time.
Yeah, man,
there's something like, I honestly, I look at the director of this week's movie, Ang Lee, and think, when I was really starting to get into films, he was a really phenomenal director. And I think these days he's probably more of an underrated director. But if you look at kind of the types of movies he's made, he's masterful in almost every type of movie. I mean, we're talking Brokeback Mountain to Crouching Tiger to Life of Pi to something like this, which is a middle-class suburban life American story in the 70s. How he nails this, I don't know.
Well, my God.
I'll just say this. Taiwan.
I've been holding this kind of card since our conversation last week with Kelly Simpson. But, when we were sort of talking about, like, people's own experiences versus their ability to tell stories, whatever those stories might be, this movie is actually a testament to he nails it, but he was born and raised in Taiwan. Yet the ennui and kind of sad nihilism of the mid 1970s. My God, he nails it. But this is an American story, so it's like
absolutely
all the more reason to be like, give everybody those chances, because talent is talent is talent, and they're going to make the right decisions, right?
Absolutely. He's masterful here. I think he sets an amazing tone. It's really funny to me because I do think this is truly a forgotten gem. It's a movie I've always loved from the first time I saw it. We have this amazing ensemble cast with Kevin Kline, Joan Allen, Christina Ricci, Elijah Wood, Sigourney Weaver, Tobey Maguire, Katie Holmes, and even a little bit of Allison Janney. Which is really fun. But just an awesome ensemble cast, especially those younger folks like Ricci and Wood and Tobey Maguire, Katie Holmes. They all went on to do great things. So perfectly cast. There's not one bad performance here.
And it's funny because we always talk about the economy, the actor, when it's a comedian, then doing drama. But a lot of times, like when we see someone who is more doing genre stuff, like horror, and I'm thinking of Sigourney Weaver here, boy, man, we really missed the opportunity to have Sigourney Weaver do a lot more dramatic roles than she did. Because here she is, like, every scene she's in, you are sitting and wondering who this character is. She is probably one of the most interesting characters. I mean, and all the characters are interesting. But I think when she is on screen, you're just going, who is this woman? And like, what are her motivations? Because she's so strange and interesting.
She seems very unapologetic about her actions throughout this entire film. She seems very confident in that.
Which again, it's the 1970s. I mean, you think about these women. I remember a movie that came out in the 1970s. I loved had one of the guys from Catch-22 in it, but I can't think of his name. But it was Diary of Mad Housewoman, and it very much is about this same sort of like, you know, a woman hitting the wall with her stupid domestic lifestyle and wanting to break free, right? And this need to do something different, and that those can manifest themselves in these self-destructive manic ways. And her character is perfectly that. And that's really what so much of this movie is about, is everyone doing that, right?
For sure. I think, you know, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but there's a certain scene where Elijah Wood's dad comes home and he's like, "Hey guys, I'm back." And
oh my God, like, I wrote this down.
He's like, "Wait, you left?" And I think this is a perfect frame of kind of the relationship between parents and children in this movie.
Yes.
You know, I'd be interested to see what you say about this movie compared to something like maybe Ordinary People from the 80s, but even a movie like American Beauty that came out 2 years after this, that is, you know, hitting some of the same tones, maybe not as funny, not nearly as funny actually. Even though this movie is charming, American Beauty probably took a little funnier tone towards it. And just kind of that comparison to just that middle America. Obviously this is the 70s and that was a little more modern for the time, but you know, everyone's kind of experimenting with their form of escapism, whether that's drugs or alcohol or sex or whatever it may be.
Well, you kind of hit the nail on the head though when you talk about American Beauty, because I think one of the things, you know, if we think about the American Beauty was another one of these like pretty famous movies about sort of like suburban nihilism, right? Mm-hmm. And you look at the era that the American Beauty takes place in, and it just made me start thinking about, because my God, this movie seemed so timely watching it right now. And obviously we're in an unprecedented time right now with just this pandemic, but I think even before this happened, the exhaust, right? Like just the overwhelming exhaustion that we all feel with sociopolitical things that are happening, and just obviously any movie that takes place with the pall of Watergate over it is going to,
and Vietnam,
yes,
Vietnam.
I mean, this is the shattering of the American dream, right? I mean, and it's funny because you go, well, how many times can you ring that goddamn bell? Because you're like, okay, it's there, and then you go, and it happens again after 9/11, and it's happening again now. Like, you just keep ringing this bell that this concept of American exceptionalism is going to shatter and fall into pieces, and that what it's going to do on a small level of neighborhoods and families and you know, this concept of what society and community means, and to our children, like it's going to trickle down into all these different places. And the idea of placing all of those chess pieces on the board and then having such an amazing talismanic force as the ice storm itself, that we see brewing, I mean, obviously it's a bookend. We start with the ice storm and then we go back through the story, but we don't necessarily know we're doing that in the beginning. It's not told specifically, but we see this storm getting ready to break through 2/3 of the movie until our adult protagonists go to this key party. This
the
storm,
infamous key party.
the infamous key party. We'll get to it, but this storm getting ready.
It's a California thing.
It's a California thing, yeah. Like everybody's doing it in the 70s. But I think this storm getting ready to break is such an amazing amalgam for what's happening to all of our characters and their concepts of the world around them, right?
No doubt. This is an extremely, confusing time for people, especially adults who have gotten comfortable with certain things in their life, and the world is changing now. You know, down to Christina Ricci calling her dad a fascist. Just stuff like that, where, you know, like you said, calling out Nixon, Watergate is the chat all around the table, and people don't really know where their morals lie. You know, they live this comfortable life, and I think it really kind of exposes the underbelly of kind of society a little bit, where people just kind of fall to their escapism. And I don't know, you even see it with someone like Joan Allen, who's really kind of more of a victim here than anyone,
right? Totally.
In her role. But even she can see the flirting early on with Kevin Kline and Sigourney Weaver, and I even at a point she tests her escapism, because people don't know how to view things anymore because the world has changed so dramatically.
Well, isn't there this feeling, and it's this anxiety, it's this very palpable anxiety that I think that, and in particular when this movie came out, I think that by the time we were in the 90s felt like a really good time to talk about all the goofiness of the 70s and to talk about disco and bell bottoms and talk about all this kind of stuff in this kind of like goofy, like half-hearted way, because no one wanted to look at the real cold hard truth, which was, for the first time since probably World War II, we had to accept as a nation that no one was minding the store, right? Like there was no moral center that was saying, here's what we should do and here's what we shouldn't do. And watching the echoes of that happen to these families, and you talk about Joan Allen, and I think Joan Allen is, she is the woman, to me, she is the female version of Kevin Costner. She is our every person, right? She is always like, she's always everyone's mom, right? Like she just portrays that in the way that she acts, the way she looks. And to see her giving up her own morals of her own marriage because she's pretty sure that her husband is cheating on her. And so she is like shrugs in this incredibly cruel and defeated way to take part in this whole like swingers couple thing that happens in our third act, that disintegration of a sense of direction and a sense of morality is like one of the saddest and most effective parts of this movie, is that there is no moral center for any of these characters anymore because they've all just slowly shaved that away from their beings.
Well, I think Ang Lee here really sets the tone of like questioning everyone. that really is a character here, and just also just feeling that unease. Like he does an amazing job of like ramping up the tension, even when Kevin Kline's cracking the ice.
Oh my God!
For his drink, that even the sound of that is ramped up, and you're like, "Oh, what is that?" It's so
ramped up. It is so effective. No, you're completely right, and I think that you're right. Also, one of the things this movie reminded me of, another director, even though thematically there's very little similarities until maybe our tragedy that takes place in the third act, but it reminded me a lot of Haneke. It reminded me a lot of Haneke's work in the sense of the camera is never siding with anyone. The camera is there to be great. Like, oh, here's Kevin Kline being a complete hypocrite to his daughter, giving her this morality tale when the only reason why he was in the house to even catch her getting frisky with Elijah Wood's character is because he was there for an affair, right? Like, the camera sits there. It doesn't take anyone's side, and it doesn't let us off the hook. It gives us that icky feeling and sticks with it for like 10 minutes. And it's masochistic, but it's good, right?
Completely. No, I agree with you. I think that's a perfect way to frame how you feel while you're watching this movie. It really is a beautifully made movie. Even the reveal of Kevin Kline and Sigourney Weaver having sex is a little shocking, because you see two people having sex and they pan up and it's like, oh, they're not married.
No, it gives you enough time.
Shocking.
Didn't that scene, the scene was masterful. Didn't it give you enough time from the last scene where we see Sigourney Weaver and her husband together, and we know for a fact it's probably not the two of them, right? Mm-hmm. And so when Kevin Kline rolls off of her, we've had enough time to guess who it might be, but we know it's not the husband. And I thought, God, what a beautiful way to set everything up and then be like, here are two people having sex. After a minute, we can tell that it's Sigourney Weaver, but who's the guy? Right. Yep. And like, oh man, it's so well done.
To touch back on the kind of boring everyman life thing that you were talking about earlier with that couple in particular with Joan Allen and Kevin Kline, they paint this very normal, boring life, but also the doldrums of just being married. There's no positive things that are really shown to us here. Basically no sex. She rolls over whenever he wants to try and have sex. He's having an affair on her. Kids don't listen to shit that we say, all of the terrible things that come with, family, I guess. I don't know. But I think it's pretty interesting to see him set this tone. And like, again, how is he doing this as a man from Taiwan who grew up in Taiwan, just nailing this so well? There's just all sorts of confusions out there and just new things. But then he has a scene like, the train pulling up and every businessman is wearing the same khaki button-up coat, making everyone look the same. So it puts you in this world of like, I don't know, it's almost futuristic a little bit.
Yeah, it's surreal. It's very surreal. There is an odd amount of surrealism. And I read an interview with Ang Lee, and he talked about reading the book. And I'll put it up here. I failed to write down the name of the author.
Rick Moody,
thank you. Who apparently by end credits of this movie was sobbing because he thought it was such a perfect representation.
That doesn't happen a lot with authors and their movies.
No, not at all. But Ang Lee said that when he read the book, he was struck by a handful of visual images, and when he described the visual images that struck him, all of them felt very surreal. Like they didn't feel they felt cinematic, but they didn't feel like a drama cinema. They felt like surreal cinema.
The details here are really great. Look at like what the people are reading, even like stuff down to that. It's very, I don't know. It's definitely a time of change.
Oh, you can start at Dostoevsky, which is like the very first thing referenced here. And just this concept of existentialism and nihilism. I also love, we have to note a young Spider-Man reading and waxing philosophical about the Fantastic Four. That's fantastic. That on its own merit, and I love that.
That's better than Iron Man having sex with Spider-Man and Wonder Boys.
I mean, that has its own place too. And I mean, there is a lot of this that actually reminds me of Wonder Boys, just from Tobey Maguire's performance.
No, I agree. It has a similar tone to Wonder Boys.
And I mean, and Katie Holmes is in there too. That can't hurt. But I do think that this Fantastic Four comic book hinging is so brilliant. This stuff where he talks about that the negative zone, this introverted space, right? Mm-hmm. That you can be tempted by the introverted space and going all the way into the negative zone. And if you think about it, if we're starting from the 1950s New Deal, Norman Rockwell painting of America, right?
Yes.
And then we go through the lens of 60s revolt and revolution, through Vietnam, through the Watergate hearing. Then the other end of that, these smoking weed, the key parties, all of this kind of stuff, the swinging sex parties, all of this, that is the negative zone, right? That is
I'll show you mine if you show me yours.
Yeah, like that's where our kids are left to, right? And that's such a wild scene. It's so clumsy and heartbreaking because she has no moral center to even understand. And like, these kids aren't dumb. They completely understand that their parents are doing super messed up stuff. Like, they know this.
What do you think of the angle that we take with Tobey Maguire's character here? Because we really spend the first half of the movie of him almost being a spectator of what's going on there,
right?
And kind of getting, he's like you said, a little bit of a stoner, but we're kind of seeing him hang outside of this circle while all this other stuff is around it. So I don't know.
I think he, more than being a pivotal character in the events. All the other events that take place are more interesting than what happens to him. But I think that he, it's kind of funny if you think about it. He is a older proxy of Elijah Wood's character, right? He's a couple years older, and he's already off in the big city. He's already off at school doing all this other stuff. And that apparently, according to his parents, is supposed to be the scary place where things are happening, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Meanwhile, the real trouble is happening right underneath the parents' roof.
Yeah,
and
the
so
younger brother.
Younger brother, younger sister, like all these people, like that's where the show me yours and I'll show you mine thing happens. That's where our ultimate tragedy with Elijah Wood's character happens. It's all right there in this tiny, close-knit neighborhood where they're all under the watchful gaze of the parents. But Tobey Maguire's character actually goes out, has like the most, he has the most like awful experience of going out to the girl's house who he likes. His dumbass roommate shows up to try and bed the girl that he said he had a crush on. Yeah. And then he ends up inadvertently drugging both of them and then like getting no satisfaction and leaving. Right. And so he is still in a lot of ways the untouched. He is still the innocent.
Yep.
Which again, I think to go back to Wonder Boys, Tobey Maguire's performance in both of these movies and a lot of stuff he did when he was younger. I think Cider House Rules would be another one.
Yeah, great movie.
He always was so good at playing the vacuum, playing sort of the character that doesn't make a lot of important decisions and has stuff happen to them, right? And so it's great.
A la Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's a great place to hinge a lot of narrative on. But again, at the end of it, that's what breaks Kevin Kline's heart, is that his son, who went away and everybody should be worried about, is the one that ends up being okay.
Yeah, let's talk about Kevin Kline here for a little bit.
Oh my God.
Boy, do I miss him being in movies. I feel like he hasn't done anything in a while, and he was always kind of a staple growing up of someone that was in a ton of great stuff, even A Fish Called Wanda.
I go back to The Big Chill, man. The Big Chill,
absolutely,
or Grand Canyon, again, another fantastic.
He has some great moments here. As much as I really probably don't like his character.
He's not a likable character, but my God, he's funny.
Like, he is. He's great. And really, this isn't a super funny movie, but like, you're talking about him riding in the car with his son, and he has this whole conversation about the birds and the bees, and after all this stuff, like talking about masturbation, all this stuff, and he says at the end of it, he's like, "Do me a favor and pretend I didn't say any of that." And then even when he's with Sigourney Weaver, he has these great moments of realization, not only about their affair and like, oh yeah, we shouldn't. She's like, she basically says, I already have a husband. I don't need another husband.
He's bitching he's bitching about his coworker's golf score.
Yeah, or something like that. She's like, I don't want any of this. But I loved how he described him and Joan Allen's relationship to Sigourney Weaver. And he says, I feel like we're on the verge of saying something to each other, but we don't know what it is.
God. It's that's so scary. And when that blossoms later, when Joan Allen, after they've had dinner, and it's this scene in the kitchen, and it is so tense and it's so masterfully acted that like I don't know about you, I didn't want to watch it.
Where she's calling him out in the kitchen. Yeah.
Oh my God. Didn't you just want to hide under a table somewhere?
I mostly wanted to hide under a table when he was hanging out in their house in boxers for like half an hour, just doing random shit. That made me more nervous because I didn't know what the outcome was going to be, where I knew Joan Allen was going to
discover.
And he kind of plays dumb. He's like, no, it's not what you think.
But she knows. She knows then. Like, he has the lamest excuses. Well, and again, that's the hypocrite scene, right? Where he's able to come in. If I can really quick, the moment right before that where Christina Ricci puts on the Nixon mask.
The dry humping and the Nixon mask.
If you pull your pants down, I'll touch it. But that's all I'm going to do. And I'm just like, when do you get a scene like this in a movie? It's brilliant. It's the weirdest but most
So
perfect
weird.
moment. Like, just so strange.
Yeah, you touched on it earlier, but just having this major rainstorm in the background building the whole time is so fun. It just shows the deft hand of Ang Lee. Again, obviously Rick Moody too. I think he's a great storyteller in all of this. I think it's really fascinating. I think, man, these people drink too, man. Did you notice? Like, they're just drinking vodka on the rocks. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, like,
that's terrible.
I've never done that. Like,
why would you do that?
no, totally. Well, and the drinking is part of this kind of kitschiness. Obviously the outfits are super kitschy. Like, they're so well done.
Smoking, drinking, yeah.
Yeah, and just like the cocktail table, right? Like the little cocktail side table with the wheels on it. Like,
sure.
And the dinner parties, these are cocktail parties, not even dinner parties. It's a after dinner party. So you have dinner with your kids, and then you drive to the neighbor's house and you have the cocktail party. And it's these groups of people that, there's obviously attractions there, some more than others, but there's a lot of people who don't necessarily have anything in common or necessarily like each other.
Yeah.
And the key party is mentioned
that's
really early.
That's really the catalyst, right? I think for a lot of things, not only Joan Allen and Kevin Kline's relationship, but also just for something to wrap the movie around and to all these people being unfaithful into one party. And it actually is a perfect metaphor for the confusion, the moral flexibility, all that, everything that you can
and almost
wrap into it.
It's moral flexibility based upon, it's like a moral flexibility not based upon like horniness. It's more based upon this hunger for something different, right? Like that it's almost like it is the I feel like that this key party, when it starts, it starts the third act of the film when they get there and they see the punch bowl with the keys in it, and they leave. Joan Allen and Kevin Kline's character, they go sit in the car and have this
conversation,
incredibly tense conversation where he, more than anything, admits, yes, I have been unfaithful to you. He won't. I mean, he still is too big of a wimp to actually say it, but he, for all intent and purposes, says, I haven't been totally faithful, which is why she's like, well, let's go in. And they go back in, and it is like this tapestry of the adults' version of a game of chicken, right? Of like, are you cool enough to do this thing that everybody's talking about, the key party, right? And so we lead into this third act, and the amount of tension that Lee is able to hold for an entire third act of a movie of this key party, it is incredible.
And the storm behind it.
And the storm behind it. And all the other little minor stories that are also taking place. But the sadness and cruelty of this key party, that tension is so powerful, man.
Absolutely. It definitely was a tense situation, even to the point where in the middle of that tension, you have a woman pick her husband's keys out on purpose, saying, oh, what how convenient. See ya.
Yeah, how weird. And then they leave together, and you see...
Because it's just like, it's so heavy.
Yeah, and you see Joan Allen's face in that moment go, I might be able to do this and just leave and save face and not do anything, or I'm going to see this all the way through. And I always think about, there is this Charles Bukowski poem. It's one of my favorites of his. I can't remember what it's called, but there's a line in it. Basically, in the poem, he takes this woman home from the bar. And,
that's which book, but that's every book.
I know. Totally. It's like every poem. But there's a line in it where he says, basically once they get back to his place and they're still kind of making out and stuff, and before they take their clothes off, he realizes that neither one of them really want to do this, but they've gotten to this place. And he says, the reference he makes is, we're both trapped behind the wallpaper from our decisions. Right. So they have nowhere to go but to just do it. And
sure.
I think that's exactly this moment at this party where all these people are trapped by every decision they've made up to this, because none of them are going to wimp out of it like I found my husband's keys, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think a really telling moment in the decision making here is when Sigourney Weaver finally chooses the young hot guy. And Kevin Kline's so drunk he like makes a reaction.
Oh, it's the worst moment. Oh God!
Like he's like no, but then he falls, and it's just like so embarrassing.
And it's so obvious to Joan Allen like what he's trying to do. Like he looks so pathetic in that moment.
So bad.
Oh God, it's brilliant. It's brilliantly done.
It truly is. There's some painfully awkward sexual experiences in this movie.
Lots of them, way more than in your average film.
Yes, at least 3 or 4 where you're like, ugh.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But not anything that's like excruciating that would turn you off or anything like that. It's just like, oh, you feel the pain for the people in the room
because it's so realistic. It's so realistic. I mean, well, and that's what Joan Allen's character ends up doing is she, her and Sigourney Weaver's husband, they go and have like the most awful fumbling sex in the car.
He admits it right away.
Well,
right away, he says, "Oh, that was terrible."
Yeah, and you go, what's the purpose of it was a get back, right? The purpose of it was a notch on a belt or a notch on the bedpost or whatever you want to say. Like it was. So I'm not completely a victim.
They weren't even attracted to each other. It's funny, I didn't even notice when they were having that key party that the odds were off, and so Kevin Kline doesn't even get picked.
No, he just ends up in the bathroom passed out, and the odds are off because the one guy, his wife is out of town. Yeah, you're totally right. And God, it's just, again, it's such a casual way, in the same way several weeks ago when we did The Farewell, when we talked about this idea of like, talking about an incredibly potent concept through a very simple story. This is a less simple story, of course, than The Farewell, but I think a way to talk about the disillusionment of the family structure and the moral center that took place in the 1970s just fucking unraveled. It's a really simple story of just basically two families and their kids and what they went through.
And the period of time they are in,
Let's get to Elijah Wood's character here. This is where I really go to the Michael Haneke reference. Elijah Wood, his character, who is this very daffy and interesting, weird,
he's peculiar.
Kid.
Yeah.
He's so peculiar, and he has this concept about molecules. He's obviously very smart, right?
Yeah. He doesn't know where to focus it though, and him and Christina Ricci's relationship is really like one-sided for sure.
Totally. Well, like in part because
he's a little puppy.
Well, and I mean, and I could ask you this as someone who has a lot of experience in this. There's some Asperger's, autism stuff going on with his character here, right? I mean, he is not making connections in a lot of the sort of societal ways that a character normally would.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily that far, but I do think he doesn't know where to focus his energy, right? Just like any other, 14-year-old kid.
And I guess that's true. So, who's really interested in science, right?
Yeah. Well, I think, it was like algebra makes sense to him. But it was, it's a really interesting character. I kind of forgot about that performance and what happens to him at the end here where, he's really kind of hoping to run into Christina Ricci, but she's back sleeping with the younger brother.
Yeah.
And he ends up getting electrocuted during this ice storm by sitting on the pole.
It is one of the most, he sits on the metal curb and the pole hits it. And it is, the way I worded it was that his death scene is graceful and spellbinding, while at the same time so simple, stupid, and cruel. It's so gruesome. In particular, once he dies and falls face down and slides across the icy road. It's so it's such a useless death that no one can learn from. That, if you think about like a death of a young person you really like in a movie that you can learn from, I'd say on one end of the spectrum is the character of Neil from Dead Poets Society. And the full other end of the spectrum is Elijah Wood's character in The Ice Storm, where there is no lesson to be learned. There is no catharsis that will come from it. It's just fucking sad and weird and tragic.
Well, I think there is a little bit of that for Kevin Kline in this last scene, where he just breaks down.
I think I agree, but I think part of his breakdown is that it is so useless.
Yeah, okay. I can see where you're coming from there. Yeah.
But tell me your thoughts on that. Like what is he learning?
I don't know. You mean, what are the characters learning from him dying?
Yeah, like what is Kevin Kline coming to grips with? Because to me, it was almost like his tears were out of like having to face just the overall chaos of all of this spinning apart.
Yeah, I think, I think it does serve a purpose. I think it does give him a life is fleeting moment potentially, right? And honestly, them in the car at the end, that's like one of the only times in the movie they're all together, right? And so maybe he's kind of realizing this and looking at his son, and I don't know. It was a very tempered death, and you don't really know what to think of it. That's
really interesting. Kind of the way that you just put it, this idea of they were all together, right? Yeah. They're all together, and the shades are pulled, right? Like we're no longer, because if you think about it, I love this interaction that Christina Ricci's character and Tobey Maguire's character have, where they both refer to each other as Charles. Yes. And he talks about the parental units. Like, it's actually like, it feels very real. It feels very lived in, and I really love their relationship in that way.
I kind of wish we hung out with them more, actually.
Same here. But, they talk about, and when they use that term of parental units, I mean, it's very obvious that they are feeling super disconnected from them. And
the whole movie, these kids are giving one-word answers to the parents that are trying to seem interested, even though they really just want that drink or that cigarette and just to chill out and
totally
be selfish. But how's school? Good. How are your grades? Fine. It's
okay. Right on. I asked. Now I'm going to go get a drink.
Yep. Well, see you later.
And so I wonder, and speaking as someone who remembers as a teenager having a very intense family-based tragedy take place in my life, that what it did is it pulled back those shades. And ever since that tragedy, my relationship with my siblings, and in particular my mother, has been way, way, way more real, right? And so it almost, maybe it's not a useless death. Maybe I'm wrong in that, and that.
Yeah, I would probably disagree with you. I do think there's some heft to what it's supposed to mean, but I think it's really up for interpretation as well.
Right.
It also could just be this culmination of all of this shit happening and him just having probably one of the worst embarrassing nights of his life and making decisions about his poor wife.
Ended with him carrying his the woman that he's been cheating on, son, dead body, up to the husband and being like, hey, like, yeah, it's a pretty bad night. I mean, it's got to be a top five bad night.
Definitely top 5 bad night. Awesome. I love this segment of Forgotten Gems. It'll give us an opportunity to talk about a lot of different cool things that we've loved over the years. I'm thinking of stuff like Rise of Leslie Vernon would be a great one.
Oh my God,
like
completely.
There's tons of things that we can throw in here that could be a lot of fun. So
last thing I have to say about Ice Storm.
Okay, sorry.
Biggest bong I've ever seen in a movie.
Oh, really?
That is a huge bong.
That was a huge bong. Have you ever seen Half Baked?
Yeah, I still think it might be bigger than Half. Well, okay, Half Baked is like saying, best fist fight I've ever seen in a movie, and then you're like, what about the one with the 2 Girl Scouts in our airplane? And you're like, no, I mean like a Like, not a joke, right? Like, for a not a joke movie, biggest bong I've ever seen.
Okay. All right. I'll have to take your word for that one. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell. And we have new
Am I pointing
episodes
to it if I do that?
Every week. The notification bell is down.
Oh, there you go. The notification bell.
Next week, we are going to start a new festival. Very excited about this one. We are going to do political fiction movies.
Oh, such a good idea, dude. Such a good idea.
I'm very excited about it. Very relevant these days.
Indeed.
And we're going to start off with Wag the Dog. We're going to do The Contender. We're going to do Being There. And then we're going to do V for Vendetta. So it should be a pretty fun festival. Please follow along. Go to our playlist. You can watch all of these with us if you want to. That's kind of the point of this thing. So thank you very much. Appreciate you listening. And you have a good night.
See you guys next time. Welcome to Deep Dive Film School.
This week we're going to do our forgotten. Sorry.
Hey, who forgot it?
Hey, no one remembers this movie.
What the fuck? Okay.
Okay.
Welcome to Deep Dive Film School.
This week we get into the John Cusack movie, The Ice Harvest.
What?
Right? I'm kidding. No, this week we're getting into 1997.
No, hold on.
Forgotten Gem.
Wow, that was good, dude. That was really good. How long did you have that planned?
I had it earlier today. I was thinking about it.
You punked me. Where's Ashton Kutcher?
The Forgotten Gem, The Ice Harvest. With John Cusack.
Fuck. All right. Okay. That was good.
Sorry.